Imagine a man so wealthy that when he traveled, entire economies crumbled under the sheer weight of his gold. A man whose fortune was so immense, modern economists struggle to put a number on it. Some saying his riches would make today's billionaires look like common merchants. His name was Mansa Musa, the ruler of the Mali Empire, a land of gold and power at the height of its glory. But this isn't just a tale of riches. It's a story of faith, ambition, and a pilgrimage so extravagant it shook the world. But who was this man? And how did he rise to become the richest person the world has ever known? Stay with me because his story is far more than gold. It's a journey through power, mystery, and the staggering legacy of a forgotten empire. Welcome to the tale of Mansa Musa, a man so wealthy. His name still echoes through history like a myth, and yet, it's all true. Born around 1280 in the heart of West Africa, Musa would one day ascend to the throne of the Mali Empire, one of the most prosperous kingdoms the world has ever seen. But unlike other rulers known for their battles, conquests, or cunning political maneuvers, Musa's fame stemmed from something different: his unimaginable wealth and how he wielded it. The world first truly noticed him in 1324, when he embarked on a pilgrimage to Mecca that would become one of the most legendary journeys in human history. He didn't just travel. He traveled with a display of wealth so vast, it shocked the world and altered economies from Africa to the Middle East. Yet behind the gold, there was strategy. Musa wasn't just rich, he was a visionary. He expanded his empire, turned Timbuktu into a center of learning and culture, and left behind a legacy that redefined what it meant to be a ruler. In this story, we'll uncover how a young man from Mali rose to a throne of limitless wealth, how his pilgrimage became one of history's most extravagant displays of power, and how his fortune built, and sometimes broke, kingdoms. And as we dive into his journey, you'll see why Mansa Musa is still called the richest man who ever lived. But wealth alone didn't define him. His story is one of ambition, faith, and the glittering rise of an empire few remember today. The Mali Empire wasn't born in gold, but it was built on it. Before Mansa Musa's rise, Mali was already known for its wealth. Its lands stretched across the Niger River, covering regions rich in salt and gold, the lifeblood of medieval trade. Caravans moved across the Sahara, bringing gold to North Africa and Europe, returning with silk, spices, and other luxuries. But it was Musa who would elevate Mali to heights never seen before. He wasn't born as a first-in-line heir. Musa came to power under unusual circumstances. The story goes that his predecessor, Mansa Abu Bakr II, had a fascination with what lay beyond the Atlantic Ocean. Obsessed with exploration, Abu Bakr reportedly set sail with a fleet of ships, never to return. The throne was left to Musa, who would transform the kingdom into a glittering beacon of power and prosperity. When Musa took the throne in 1312, he inherited a realm already wealthy, but he saw its true potential. Under his rule, Mali's borders expanded dramatically, stretching into present-day Senegal, Mauritania, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, Gambia, Guinea, and Ivory Coast. With new lands came more gold mines, especially the Bambara and Bouré mines, which produced an astonishing portion of the world's gold supply. But Musa wasn't content with merely sitting atop his riches. He had a grander vision. He saw Mali not just as a kingdom of gold, but as a cultural and intellectual powerhouse. This ambition would eventually lead him to one of the most famous journeys in history, a pilgrimage so lavish it would leave the world stunned. For Muslims, the pilgrimage to Mecca, known as the Hajj, is a sacred duty. For Musa, it was also a chance to show the world the power of Mali. But this was no ordinary trip. Musa didn't just plan a royal journey. He prepared an expedition that bordered on the unbelievable. Historical accounts tell us that Musa traveled with an entourage of 60,000 men, including soldiers, officials, and servants. Each was dressed in the finest silk and brocade. Alongside them marched 80 camels, each carrying 300 pounds of gold dust. That's over 24,000 pounds of gold. A fortune so vast, it's hard to imagine even today. But Musa wasn't flaunting his wealth for vanity alone. He knew this journey would introduce Mali to the world, establish it as a center of trade and culture, and elevate his status to legendary heights. In 1324, Musa set out on his pilgrimage across the Sahara. The journey itself was a feat of endurance, passing through harsh deserts and treacherous landscapes. But what stunned those who saw him wasn't the size of his caravan. It was the wealth that seemed to flow like water. When Musa passed through Cairo, the city would never be the same. He gave away gold freely, so much, in fact, that the value of gold in Egypt plummeted, causing a decade-long economic crisis. Prices soared, markets struggled, and merchants were left reeling. It was one of history's most dramatic cases of inflation, all caused by a single man's generosity. But Musa wasn't just tossing gold to the wind. He donated to the poor, funded mosques, and impressed rulers with his piety and grandeur. Everywhere he went, he left a trail of awe and economic turmoil in his wake. The streets of Cairo had never seen anything like it. Witnesses described gold being handed out as though it were common currency. Merchants watched in disbelief as the value of their goods shifted overnight. Musa's generosity was legendary, but it was also catastrophic for local economies unprepared for such sudden wealth. But Cairo was just the beginning. Musa's journey to Mecca would mark one of history's most spectacular demonstrations of power, and it was only halfway done. After leaving Cairo in a whirlwind of gold and astonishment, Mansa Musa and his massive caravan continued toward the holy city of Mecca. The journey through the Arabian deserts was long and grueling, yet the caravan pressed on, a moving sea of wealth glittering under the scorching sun. In Mecca, Musa's display of devotion matched his display of riches. He prayed in the great mosque, gave lavish donations to religious institutions, and commissioned projects to aid pilgrims and scholars alike. Everywhere he went, people whispered of the African king who seemed wealthier than entire nations. But what made this pilgrimage truly extraordinary wasn't just the gold. It was the way Musa combined faith and power. He wasn't merely showing off his riches. He was solidifying Mali's image as a kingdom blessed by God and destined for greatness. His generosity earned him respect, but his presence stirred jealousy among some rulers, who wondered how a distant African empire could command such fortune. When the pilgrimage was over, Mansa Musa began his return to Mali, but the legend of his journey was only beginning. In an attempt to fix the economic crisis he caused in Cairo, Musa reportedly bought back much of the gold he had given away, paying exorbitant prices to reverse inflation. It was perhaps the earliest recorded case of a man trying to stabilize an economy he had accidentally crashed. Yet, despite the chaos, the pilgrimage accomplished its goal. The world now knew of Mali. Maps began to depict Musa's empire, and traders across Europe and the Middle East became eager to connect with this golden land. Back in Mali, Musa's wealth was channeled into something more enduring than gold dust: knowledge. Musa transformed Timbuktu from a modest trading post into a thriving hub of culture and learning. He built mosques, libraries, and the now famous Sankore University, attracting scholars, architects, and poets from across the Islamic world. Timbuktu became a city of ideas, where theology, astronomy, law, and literature flourished. For Musa, wealth wasn't just about gold. It was about creating a legacy of intellect and progress that would outlast his reign. Under Musa's rule, the Mali Empire reached its zenith, stretching over 500,000 square miles and controlling nearly half of the world's known gold reserves. Trade routes through Mali became some of the busiest in the medieval world, carrying goods and culture across Africa, the Middle East, and Europe. Yet, despite this incredible success, Musa remained deeply religious and humble in character, at least by the standards of kings. He was known for his sense of justice, devotion to his faith, and determination to make Mali not just rich, but respected. News of Musa's pilgrimage and Mali's wealth spread like wildfire. Arab scholars wrote of his riches. European cartographers placed him on maps wearing a golden crown, and merchants dreamed of tapping into Mali's immense resources. One of the most famous depictions of Musa appeared in the Catalan Atlas of 1375, where he is shown holding a golden orb and wearing royal finery, a visual testament to his legendary status. But while his wealth was undeniable, his true legacy lay in how he used it, not merely to flaunt power, but to shape an empire that would stand as a beacon of prosperity and culture long after his death. As the years passed, Mansa Musa's empire grew even more prosperous. Trade routes thrived, cities expanded, and Mali became a symbol of wealth and power known from Africa to Europe. Yet with great power came great responsibility and immense pressure. Ruling an empire of this size required more than gold. Musa had to maintain alliances, oversee distant provinces, and ensure that his wealth translated into stability rather than greed. But as history would show, no empire, no matter how rich, remains untouchable forever. Among Mansa Musa's most lasting achievements were his monumental building projects. Upon returning from Mecca, he brought with him renowned architects, including the legendary Abu Ishaq al-Sahili, who designed many of Mali's iconic mosques. One of the most famous was the Jingareber Mosque in Timbuktu, constructed with mud and would yet standing for centuries as a symbol of Islamic scholarship. Musa didn't just build for beauty, he built for legacy, creating spaces where faith and knowledge could thrive together. At its height, Mali controlled nearly half of the known gold reserves in the world. Musa's coffers overflowed, and his reputation became almost mythical. Some stories claimed he could have bought every palace in Europe. Others said his wealth was so vast it couldn't be measured by mortal means. But beneath the glittering surface, cracks were forming. Managing such a sprawling empire was difficult, and ensuring loyalty among distant provinces was even harder. Musa's wealth had drawn admiration, but also envy. Around 1337, after ruling for 25 years, Mansa Musa passed away. His death marked the end of Mali's golden age. Though his heirs inherited a kingdom of riches, they lacked his vision and ability to maintain unity. Over the coming decades, internal strife and external pressures would weaken Mali, leading to its gradual decline. Yet even as the empire faded, Musa's legend grew. Scholars, travelers, and mapmakers spoke of the African king, who carried more gold than the world had ever seen, and who used it to build a legacy of faith and learning. It was Cairo, 1324, a city already known for its riches. Yet what was about to unfold would eclipse anything the medieval world had witnessed. The sun blazed down on the bustling streets as Mansa Musa's caravan approached, shimmering like a golden river flowing across the desert. Tens of thousands marched behind their king. Soldiers, attendants, scholars, and merchants, dressed in silks and fine brocade, their steps raising clouds of dust that sparkled in the sunlight. Then came the camels, 80 of them, each carrying hundreds of pounds of pure gold. Not coins, not jewelry, gold dust, the currency of empires. Witnesses would later recall how Musa distributed this wealth with an almost divine generosity, funding mosques, giving alms to the poor, rewarding scholars, and gifting rulers so freely that they stood stunned before his charity. But generosity has consequences. As Musa poured gold into Cairo's markets, its value plummeted. For years after his visit, Egypt's economy was thrown into turmoil. Prices soared. Merchants suffered. A single king's pilgrimage had caused one of history's earliest recorded economic collapses, just by being too rich. Yet, despite the chaos, Musa's fame exploded. Word of his journey reached Europe, where cartographers sketched his likeness onto maps. Crown upon his head, golden scepter in hand, signaling to all who saw it, "Here is the richest man who ever lived." Mansa Musa's story is one of wonder and legacy. Born into a kingdom already blessed with gold, he elevated Mali into a realm of wealth, faith, and learning that captured the imagination of the medieval world. But his true achievement wasn't measured in gold, it was in vision. He turned Timbuktu into a thriving center of knowledge, built grand mosques and universities, and placed his empire firmly on the map of history. Even centuries later, historians struggle to calculate his wealth, with modern estimates suggesting the equivalent of $400 billion, and some claiming it could be far more. Yet his legacy carries a lesson beyond riches. Wealth can dazzle, but it is fleeting. What endures are the institutions he built, the knowledge he nurtured, and the stories that continue to inspire wonder centuries after his death. So, was Mansa Musa truly the richest man in history? Perhaps. But more importantly, He was a ruler who understood that gold alone doesn't build an empire, vision does. If you enjoyed this journey into the golden age of Mali, remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more untold stories from history's most fascinating corners.